Hi. In this video, we'll talk about creating a JavaScript application which can retrieve the records from the FHIR server. So as we have seen in the previous video where we can create the FHIR API in Azure. So since I already created it, this is the FHIR API um, instance in the Microsoft Azure. So these are the properties of it. So you can see how we can access the device, what are the different role assignments we have. So to go into the next phase, so after this FHIR API server is created, then we can see if it is properly working by going over to the FHIR URL. Let us copy the link and see if we are getting the output, the capability statement from the server in FHIR format. As we can see here, the resource, the output from the server is in FHIR format as what we expected. So it is working correctly. Next phase would be to make sure that the cross-origin resource policy is properly configured. So we have to set origin as star and headers as star. It has to accept everything. And this is the default setting which is needed for the FHIR server to work properly, to accept requests from the web apps. So once this is done, we need to register the client application. We can go to app registrations and re-register a client. So in our case, in order to save time, I already created the apps. So this is the app which is created. So the apps are needed to post the data into the FHIR server and also retrieve the data from FHIR server. The important parts from the FHIR web app is to get the application ID and the tenant ID. These two information are critical. We need to store this separately and also create a secret. Since I've already created the app secret, I have stored this secret in a separate file, and I'll be using it in my Postman API for making calls through the API. So once this step is done, we need to also get the subscription ID. So from the subscription ID, we can get it from here directly. You can click on the subscriptions and you can get the subscription ID, this the ID. So these 4 items are needed: the application ID, the tenant ID, and the client secret, and the subscription ID. These are needed for Postman to make the calls. So once this is set up, we also need to make sure, as I mentioned here, the role assignments are critical. So the FHIR web app should be marked as a FHIR data contributor. The role should be data contributor. Unless this is specified, the app would not be able to make calls, read-write calls to this FHIR server. So this is the setting on Azure. So let's go to the Postman to make sure that we have the environment set up. So I have set up the environment. It's called Azure 2. These are the variables that I have set up: tenant ID, client secret, and subscription ID. So first we need to get the bearer token. This is the URL to which we should make a post call to get the bearer token. So we have received the bearer token, and then we can also get the subscription ID. So this is a subscription ID that I am using. And we can get the capability statement from the server. As you can see, this is the response from the server. This is the same response as this one. It's a capability statement from the FHIR server in Microsoft Azure. It shows all the capabilities of the server. And the next part is to see how we can get the patient data. So for getting the patient data, we need to specify OAuth authentication, OAuth 2, which I have set up here. And I'm using a token, which the server has released. So by providing /patient in the URL and asking the server, we can get a bundle details of all the patients which are stored on the server. In this case, I have sample of 4 patients. Just to show an example of how the FHIR server stores the patient records. We can add a new patient data. So it is possible by simply going into the body of the API handler, and I can specify. So let me show you. This is the client app. This is the app, the JavaScript app, which I have used. So in this case, I have 4 users who are currently stored on the FHIR server. It is able to retrieve the data. And if I want to add a new user, a new patient, let's take an example of patient 5. Let me say it is James. Hill. To keep it separate, I'm just changing this data to make sure that this is new data which is being pushed. So I modified the data. So it will be using the OAuth authenticated token, which I have already authenticated with. And I am trying to post this data into the FHIR server. Okay, I get the 201 created, meaning this record has been created on the FHIR server. Let us see if it's showing up. We can see the patient record here. So this is how we can interact with the FHIR server API on Microsoft Azure using a web client. We can post the data using the API. In this case, I have just demoed using the Postman API. But there are multiple ways where we can post the data, retrieve the data from FHIR source. This comes to the end of the presentation. Thank you.